Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome everybody for today's talk by Bhaskar Vishas. Those who don't know him, uh, he is currently a PhD student with Professor Sukanto Bose in Inter University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics in Pune. He did his bachelor's and master's from Presidency University, and from 2016 onwards, he is a PhD student there in IUSC in Pune. He has been author of very interesting articles on gravitational waves and neutron stars. So he is going to share one of his recent papers. Here you go, Bhaskar.
Thank you, Chiranjit, for the nice introduction, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting me here, especially Bharat. So today I'll be talking about constraining Newton's third equation of state using existing and upcoming astrophysical observations. So this talk will be based on two of my recent papers, and I have been instructed to keep this talk as general as possible. So I'll try that, but if at any point if you think you are not understanding anything, so please don't hesitate to ask me any question. Okay, so let's move on. So first of all, what is neutron star? So when a star end up all its nuclear fuel, it starts to collapse because of the gravity. So stars which are more massive than the 30 times the mass of the sun, which is also known as solar mass, after the collapse they become black hole, and stars which are massive between 8 to 30 times the mass of the sun, after the collapse they go through supernova and leave behind a dense remnant which is known as neutron star. So the mass of the neutron star roughly varies between 1 to 2 solar mass of the solar mass, and however it could be more than 2 solar mass also. The exact upper limit of neutron star mass we do not know yet, and the radius of the neutron star is of the order of 10 to 15 kilometer. So now you can imagine so if we squeeze our sun into a city like Pune, that will be a neutron star. So from this estimate, you can guess how dense that material could be. So therefore, one fundamental question is, what is neutron star made of? So here in the right hand side, I show you a schematic diagram of the neutron star interior. So the current understanding is that neutron star possesses a thin crust which is of the order of 1 to 2 kilometer, and as we and the density at the surface of the neutron star is of the order of 10 to the power 16 gram per cube, and as we go from the surface to the center of the neutron star, density increases rapidly. So for example, at the center of the neutron star, density could reach up to 10 to the 16 gram per cube. Now, at the surface, there are heavy nuclei and electrons also. For example, there are iron nuclei. And as we go from the surface to the inside to the neutron star, neutrons become nuclei become more neutron rich, and and at the center of the neutron star, some exotic material could appear. For example, the quark, hyperon, those kind of exotic material could again appear. So we do not know exactly what is inside the neutron star. So so our objective is to find out what is neutron star made of actually. So now, given this introduction, one question arises in our mind. So can we make neutron star like material in our Earth or in our laboratory? So to understand, so to answer this question, we look at this diagram. So this diagram is between the temperature and the net baryon density. So the y-axis is the temperature and x-axis is the net baryon density. So the normal material which we observe in our Earth or which we deal with in our laboratory, they actually lie in this region where the number density is low and as well as the energy also low. Now, in order to reach higher energy density, high number density, we have built this particle accelerator. So in particle accelerator, we increase the temperature, and as we increase the temperature, we can move to the high baryon density. So most of the particle accelerator, they actually operate in this region. But neutron star, they lie in this region where the density of the matter is could be 10 times higher than the normal nuclei. But the temperature of the neutron star is very low compared to the Fermi energy. Therefore, from this diagram, it can be clearly understood that we cannot make neutron star like material in our laboratory. Therefore, only way we can probe neutron star matter through the astrophysical observation of neutron star. Now, let's talk about neutron star equation of state and the mass radius. So, neutron star equation of state actually defines the relation between the pressure and density, energy density inside a neutron star. So here, this equation of state is denoted by this relation: P is the pressure and rho is the energy density. And in the left diagram, I have shown you three different equations of state. So the bottom one is the soft equation of state. So for the soft equation of state, a pressure increases less rapidly with the increase of energy density. And the upper one is the steep equation of state. So for the steep equation of state, pressure increases more rapidly with respect to the energy density. Now, given this three equation of state, one can ask this question: if these are the correct equation of state of neutron star, then what will be the macroscopic properties of the neutron star, such as what will be the mass and radius of the neutron star? So to find out this question, we need to solve the hydrostatic equilibrium equation for neutron star. So at hydrostatic equilibrium, the pressure inside the neutron star will be balanced against the gravity. And if one solve those that hydrostatic equations given this equation of state, we arrive to this diagram, which is the mass radius diagram. So here I would like to point out one thing, that this is a sequence. So that means here each point in this mass radius sequence is a neutron star. So if we take one point here, it will have a mass of 2 solar mass and radius is of 10 kilometer. Now one thing we should notice that for each equation of state, there is a maximum mass of neutron star. For example, for the soft equation of state, the maximum mass lies here, and for the steep equation of state, maximum mass lies here. And as we go from soft to steep, the maximum mass increases, and also the radius of the neutron star also increases. Therefore, for various equation of state, we arrive to two different mass radius relation. Now the question is, what is the correct equation of state of neutron star? The answer is we do not know, because we do not know what is neutron star exactly made of, and even if we guess what is neutron star exactly made of, we do not know how do they interact at such high densities. That's why we model neutron star equation of state, and the various modeling leads to different type of equation of state, and for the different type of interaction equation of state, we get different type of mass radius relation. Now,
Bhaskar,
yeah,
I have some basic question.
yeah.
So when you draw these three lines, one is soft, intermediate, and stiff. So are there any limit how much soft or how much stiff?
Are there any limit on? So this will be determined. So there are many conditions.
If I draw another line below to soft. So how do you say how much soft?
Okay, so there are various conditions whenever building neutron star equation of state, that you have to maintain the mechanical stability inside the neutron star. That means always the pressure should always be an increasing function of density, and also you have to maintain the speed of sound limit. So from the equation of state, this diagram, you can calculate the sound speed, right? So that sound speed shouldn't be greater than the speed of sound. So those type of condition you have to maintain, and so maintaining those type, you can arrive to this equation of state. So now you can include various type of interaction inside the neutron star, and those interaction leads to this type of soft equation of state or steep equation of state. So there are parameters are like that. So we can tune those parameters to to actually produce different equation of state. Okay, so now the question is now the since we do not know the Newton's equation of state, but one thing is for sure. So one of these equation of state hopefully will be correct in future. So how do we find out the correct equation of state of Newton's star? So the idea is,
Bhaskar, someone has wrote in the chat box, is there any connection between speed of sound? Whatever the question I had asked you, someone wrote you this question. Is there any
so speed
connection
of
between
sound,
speed of
yeah.
sound? Yeah.
So speed of sound is defined as dp d rho. So that is the slope of from this diagram. So if we know the equation of state, we can calculate the speed of sound, right? And speed of sound actually determines how stiff or how soft the equation of state is. So for soft equation of state, the speed of sound will be lower, and stiff equation of state, the speed of sound will be higher. So if the speed of sound is low, we expect to get soft equation of state, and the maximum mass. So this will be denoted by this mass radius diagram. So the maximum mass will be lower, and if it is higher, the maximum mass will be higher. Also, the radius will be higher. Okay. So now, I hope that answered the question, right? Sorry,
Yes. Right.
Okay. So I'll move on. So now the question is, from astrophysical observation, how do we find out the correct equation of state? So the idea is, from astrophysical observation, we will observe many neutron star. So one of the neutron star will be, for example, will get here, the another will get here, another will get here, and so on. So when we will have many dots here in this mass radius line, we will connect those dots and we will get the mass radius diagram here. And since this mass radius diagram has one-to-one correspondence with the pressure density, so from this diagram we can arrive to the pressure density. So that's the idea. Now let's talk about the observations. So neutron star was first observed in radio. So it was a lady, Jocelyn Bell. So actually she observed the neutron star first through her own radio telescope. And that time she was a grad student, but unfortunately her guide took all the credit, and he got the Nobel Prize for that discovery. So but later we came to know that it was actually Jocelyn Bell who actually discovered neutron star. So in 2018 she got breakthrough prize for that discovery. So but as a great person she is, she donated all the money for the women's science. So this is a bit sad story, but I'm sure for this is a motivating one. Now from the radio observation, we can measure the mass of the neutron star very precisely. So for example, we have observed a few massive radio pulsar. So here one is shown by this red band. So for this observation, we have observed the mass of the neutron star is around 1.97 plus minus 0.04 solar mass. Now this massive pulsar actually helps us to rule out several equation of state. So those equation of state which do not produce this amount of maximum mass, they are automatically now ruled out. So for example here, MS1, FSU, GM3, PAL6, GS1, SQ1, those equation of state now immediately ruled out. Now still we are left with many equation of state, so which cannot be ruled out by the maximum mass observation alone. To rule out those equation of state, we need radius measurement also, but from the radio observation we do not get radius measurement of neutron star. Now from the X-ray observation, actually we get both mass and radius measurement of the neutron star. So in sorry, is there any question?
No.
Okay.
Someone
Thanks.
has on audio.
Okay, thanks. So in X-ray, neutron stars stay in a low mass X-ray binary system where the companion mass is a low mass star, and neutron star accretes matter from the low mass star, and as a process, an accretion disk is formed around the neutron star. And when the accretion disk gets luminous, we observe X-ray emission through our X-ray telescope, and from the luminosity we actually measure the mass of the neutron star, and from the X-ray spectrography we can measure the radius of the neutron star also. So here in this mass radius plot, I have shown several X-ray measurement of neutron star, where the mass radius contour is shown here. So earlier I talked about that from the astrophysical observation we will get a dot in the mass radius plane. So here you can see we have we have a lot of uncertainties in astrophysical observations. So instead of dot we are getting this big contour. Therefore, when we use this type of measurement to constrain the equation of state of a neutron star, instead of a line we will get a band in the pressure density diagram. And also there is one more factor that the measurement which are coming from the X-ray observation are not very reliable, because it depends on several factors. So when we measure the radius, we need to model the atmosphere of neutron star, and that because of this modeling, a lot of systematical uncertainties actually get introduced. So the X-ray measurement are not that reliable. Now let's talk about gravitational wave measurement. So as you know, in 2017, for the first time we observed.
Can you, Bhaskar, can you little bit more talk about the this X-ray observation, because you are talking about little large error. What observational people trying to modify in future? So do you have any idea?
For example, so when you were observing, the accretion disk is formed around a neutron star, and we are observing the X-ray photons through our telescope. Now we need to we need to model this luminosity, right? So for that we assume that spectra is a spectra follows the black body radiation, but sometimes it is not true exactly. So that thing we have to model. Also, you have to calculate the distance from our telescope to the event. So that distance calculation depends on the modeling, how you are modeling the atmosphere of the neutron star, because you need to calculate the temperature of the neutron star at that point also. So a lot of modeling is actually involved in that process. So we do not know the exact environment of the neutron star in such process. So because of those modeling, actually systematic errors actually get is introduced in radius measurement. So that's why they are not very reliable.
Okay.
So let's talk about GW. So in GW, here I have shown you the schematic diagram of the GW waveform in the upper panel, and in the lower panel the three different phases of GW waveform of gravitational wave merger is shown. So the first phase is the inspiral phase, when two neutron stars they rotate around each other, and as they are rotating around each other, they are emitting gravitational wave. And since they are emitting gravitational wave, they will come closer and closer, and after some point they will merge. So this is the merger process, and this merger process is very complicated. So during the merger process, lot of materials will be ejected. So this cartoon diagram actually shows those ejector here, and after the merger a single body will be formed, and that body is a highly rotating and oscillating object, and during this whole procedure actually gravitational wave will be emitted. So this is for the inspiral part. So in the inspiral part, as you see, as the two body are approaching towards together, the frequency actually increasing, and as well as the amplitude, and at the point of the merger the amplitude will be maximum, and after the merger gravitational wave will be still emitted, because this body is now a highly rotating object, and it will keep on emitting gravitational wave as long as it rotates. Now the question is, the thing is, the LIGO-Virgo instrument actually is sensitive in particular frequencies. So it is sensitive between 20 Hz to some 1 kilohertz. So that range actually covers the inspiral part only. So with the LIGO-Virgo instrument, we can only observe, right now we can only observe the inspiral part of the neutron star. we do not observe the merger and we do not observe the post merger. So so we have to do the science with the inspiral part only. So the thing is, question is what kind of fundamental physics we can do the inspiral phase. Now in the inspiral phase, when two neutron stars they rotate around each other, they get tidally deformed because of the presence of the external tidal field, which is given by the companion object. So are there any questions?
Yes, someone wrote about this. You have shown in the gravitational waveform where the red line is showing. So someone asking what is red line?
Oh, the red line. So I'll suggest
some reference line.
No,
reference line, right?
Not reference line. Let's see the. Okay, I think that is the frequency is plotted in some weird scale. So we do not understand actually. So just leave it for that. So here frequency is plotted as a function of time, and it should be scaled to understand it clearly.
Okay.
Okay. So now the inspiral phase, each neutron star gets tidally deformed because of the presence of external tidal field, which is given by the companion neutron star. Now this is just like our moon Earth system. So in our Earth, we observe tide in a daily basis, right? Because of the tidal interaction which is given by the moon. So the same thing actually happens in the binary neutron star system also. So now since each neutron star gets deformed, it develops a quadrupole moment in it. So here Qij is the quadrupole moment inside a neutron star, and epsilon ij is the external tidal field. So at linear order, this Qij is proportional to epsilon ij, and the proportionality constant is lambda, which is called the tidal deformability. So which characterizes how the neutron star is going to respond against some external tidal field. So this relation actually you can this is analogous to the Hooke's law. So Hooke's law is the stress is proportional to the strain. So you can actually understand by this way. This relation can be understood by that way. Now this lambda is a very important quantity for gravitational wave observations because it comes in the phase of the gravitational wave. So therefore it can modify the gravitational wave signal. So in the left diagram, I have shown you this gravitational wave phase. So the magenta one is for the is for without the tidal interaction, and the green one is with the tidal interaction. So you can see there is a mismatch in phase if we introduce the tidal deformation. So therefore, from the observation, we can actually find out what is the mismatch, and we can calculate what is the value of lambda. Now this value of lambda depends on the equation of state of the neutron star. Therefore, through the measurement of lambda, we can constrain the equation of state of neutron star. So from this graph, we can actually go to this graph. So that is the so here y-axis is the pressure and x-axis is the rho. So it is plotted in log scale. Now let's talk about how we can parameterize neutron star equation of state. So here in this slide, the top equation is the equation of the equation of state inside a neutron star. So P here is the pressure inside a neutron star, and E naught is the energy per particle of a nuclear matter. Now inside the neutron star, matter is asymmetric in neutron to proton ratio. Therefore, we can split E naught in two terms. The one term is for the symmetric nuclear matter, that is E naught rho. The another term is the asymmetric nuclear matter, that is denoted by EC. So for E naught, the number of protons equal to number of neutrons, and for eSIM, this is also known as symmetry energy. So this characterizes how symmetric or asymmetric is the neutron matter. And delta is the symmetry parameter, which is defined at the bottom of the slide, which is rho n minus rho p by rho. So rho n is the number density of neutron, rho p is the number density of proton, and rho is the total number density. Now we go a little bit further and we expand these two terms about the nuclear saturation density, that is rho naught. So about this nuclear saturation density, E naught and eSIM actually are minimum. They are minimum. That's why you can expand then about rho naught, and we are expanding them in a Taylor series and keeping up to quadratic term. So while expanding, we are getting few coefficients. So those are shown here in magenta color. So
Bhaskar,
there will be, yeah,
I think the symmetry energy is not minimum at saturation density. It's the symmetric. It's the E0 which is minimum,
yeah,
not the
E0
E0.
is minimum. Yeah, fine. While expanding, we get few coefficients here. So those coefficients are shown here in magenta color. So the coefficients are E naught, K naught, J naught, E sim, L, K sim, and J sim. So our target is to constrain these parameters using the astrophysical observations. And when we can constrain those parameters using the astrophysical observation, we can calculate the pressure density and put a constant on the pressure density itself. Let's talk about the prior. So our prior will be motivated by the nuclear physics experiment or the nuclear physics results which we know already, So for that, we divide the parameters in three classes. One for the lowest order parameters, those are this E naught and rho naught. So E naught is the binding energy and rho naught is the saturation density. So these two parameters are very well determined from the nuclear physics experiment. So that's why we keep them fixed in our study. And the next order parameters are K naught, E sim, and L. So for these parameters, we have plenty of experimental results and as well as theoretical ab initio calculations. But still, the error bar on these parameters are pretty large. So for this reason, we consider a Gaussian prior, and the value of median and the sigma of these parameters are shown here in this table. And the higher order parameters, those are J naught, K sim, and J sim. They are virtually unconstrained from the nuclear physics experiment, because from the nuclear physics experiment we cannot reach high density. So those parameters can only be constrained using astrophysical observations. So that's why we chose a broad uniform prior for those parameters. Additionally, we put other conditions, for example, the monotonicity, which I already talked about, that pressure should be always an increasing function of energy density, causality, speed of sound should be less than the speed of light, and the two solar mass criteria. That is, from the radio observations, we have observed a neutron star which is as massive as 2 solar mass. So each equation of set should be able to reproduce that amount of maximum mass, otherwise it will be discarded. Now let's talk about the data. So in our paper, we use two GW observations and one NICER observations. So in GW observation, the information of equation of state comes through a quantity called lambda tilde. So this lambda tilde is a function of mass 1, mass 2, and lambda 1, lambda 2 of the binary system. So lambda 1, lambda 2 are the corresponding tidal deformities of the two neutron star. And here I show you the posterior distribution of lambda tilde which are coming for the observation. So left hand side is for coming from GW 17/17, and right hand side is coming from GW 19/04/25. So one interesting fact is that that lambda tilde distribution has bimodality in it. So for example, for GW 17/17, there is one peak which is around 200, and another peak is around 600. So this bimodality actually will play an important role in our study. So I'll request you to remember this information of lambda tilde. And from the NICER observation, we get the mass radius distribution of neutrons.
Bhaskar, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you have taken two GW observations prior, right? So one is GW 19/04/25. So why you have taken second one? Why not one only? Is there any reason why you have taken two observational likelihood function?
So the idea is that we'll stack many observations, and if we stack many observations, we'll get a better constant on a neutron star equation of state. So that's why we are combining multiple observations. So if you combine one observation, for example, GW17, you will get one constant. But if you introduce another observation, the constant on the equation of state will be improved. So that's the idea here. Is it has it answered your question?
Okay. I understand.
Okay. Sorry, I cannot follow the chat, so it will be helpful if you can speak up.
Okay, we will take question later on the chat question.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. So from the nicer observation, actually, we get the mass radius distribution of the neutron star. So here, the mass radius distribution is shown in this plot. So in our work, we will be using these three data or these three observations to put a joint constraint on the neutron star equation of state. And the way it can be done through the Bayesian statistics. So this is the Bayes theorem. So here the left hand side is called the posterior. So theta here is the equation of state parameters. So this thing is called is the probability of getting the equation of state parameters given our data. So data is all these three data, and this is equal to the likelihood. So what is the probability of the getting the data given our equation of state parameter times this p theta. The p theta is the prior, which I have already discussed, and c is a normalization constant. So just forget about it for the time being. And since we are treating all these observations as an independent observations, so we can multiply the probability. So the joint likelihood is written here by this equation. So for GW it will be probability of getting lambda tilde given our equation of set parameters, and for NICER it will be probability of getting mass and radius given the equation of set parameters. So now we sample this posterior distribution using a nested sampling algorithm, which is implemented in a Python-based package called PyMultiNest, and by doing that we calculate the posterior distribution of the equation of set parameters. So here I show you the results, which are based on these three observations. So in this figure, the marginalized posterior distribution of pressure as a function of energy density is shown in log scale. So the yellow one is coming from GW17017 alone. The green one is coming from GW190425 and GW17017 by combining these both GW observations, and the blue one is coming when we are combining all the three observations. So from this picture, actually, we cannot distinguish between green and blue because the second GW observation, GW190425, it is not very informative. So the data was very noisy, so it doesn't give us very good information about the neutron equation of state. But when we are combining NICER with GW, it helps us to constrain the equation of state little bit. Now, one interesting fact is that using our equation of state parameterization, we are getting stiffer equation of state posterior compared to some previous studies. So, for example, LIGO have also done this analysis with a spectral equation of state parameterization, and they have found softer equation of state posterior compared to our study. So, for example, here we are getting the value of lambda 1.4 for GW17 data is around 613 plus minus some error bar, where LIGO found it 200 plus minus with some error bar. So therefore, we are getting stiffer equation of state posterior compared to them. Now, if we recall the lambda tilde posterior of GW17017, so it has bimodality in it, right? So one peak is around 200 and another peak is around 600. So our parameterization kind of prefers the secondary peak, though it has lesser probability. That's why we are getting median value is around 613. So the reason is our prior range actually motivated by the nuclear physics experiment. So it is very difficult for nuclear physics theory to produce that softness in equation of state, which actually astrophysical observation demands, keeping the maximum mass constraint. So that's why we found a tension between nuclear physics and astrophysical observations based on our equation of state parameterization. Now, here in this slide, we project how the equation of state constraint will be improved if we stack GW17017 like system one after another. So that means here each source is assumed to be exactly same as GW17017, and by doing it, here I show the evolution of R1.4 and lambda 1.4 as a number of observations. And here you can see that the median value of these two quantity shifts from a higher value to lower value after 5 to 10 observations. So the reason is, as we are stacking GW17017 like system one after another, the primary peak of lambda tilde distribution gets stronger and stronger, and after 5 to 10 observation, only the primary peak contributes. The secondary peak, or the contribution coming from the secondary peak, becomes negligible. So that's why we get a very lower value of R1.4 and lambda 1.4. So for example, here after 10 observations, we see the value of lambda 1.4 is around 217. So that actually explains the sampling around the secondary peak of lambda tilde. Okay, so for the time being, since we are
Bhaskar,
yeah.
So after 10 observations, you said the lambda 1.4 says that the equation of state is softer, right?
Yes.
But in some previous slide, you said about the stiffer. Like if you go previous slide.
Yeah.
So here, so the key features here you have said that the amplifies the stiffer equation of state. So I don't understand. According to next slide result says that the equation of state softer.
Okay, let me explain it again. So, so here we are getting stiffer equation of state. For example, if we use GW17Z17 data also, right? So because the most of the contribution here we are getting from the secondary peak actually, because our prior range actually prefers this secondary peak instead of the primary peak. But as we are multiplying the observation GW17Z17 like observation one after another, since if you multiply this distribution again and again, the contribution coming from this primary peak will be much higher than the secondary peak. So after some point, after some observation, in our case we are seeing after 5 to 10 observation, this contribution coming from this primary peak completely dominate over the secondary peak. So now this peak will not contribute at all. So we'll be getting contribution from that peak only. So that's why we're getting softer equation of state. So here that is what happening. So has it answered your question?
Yes, but the error bar I have seen the almost very less compared to the chipper case. How is it possible?
Compared to what?
In the stiffer case, like in the previous case.
Yeah, because now see now this particular region will not contribute at all. So you can imagine after 10 observation, the lambda tilde distribution will peak around here. Only will be this. So your error bar will be shrunk by a larger amount, right? So that is what they're seeing. Okay. But for the time being, one thing I would like to point out, this is a completely hypothetical situation because we are stacking GW17Z17 like a solution one after another. So each source here assumed to be exactly similar to GW17Z17. So this situation may not happen if we observe different type of signal. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide. So here in our study, we found there is a tension between nuclear physics and astrophysical observations. And we claim that this tension is due to the nuclear physics prior, due to the prior, which is nuclear physics more informed. So now, if we relax those prior assumptions, so remember for our parameters, few parameters we chose Gaussian prior, and we also fixed few lower order parameters, for example binding energy and saturation density. Now if we free those parameters and if you use a wide flat prior for those parameters, now our parameterization will also be agnostic, just like spectral equation of state or piecewise positivity, because they are not directly indicative to nuclear physics, right? So now, choosing that kind of prior, we again run our Bayesian analysis, and we found now our equation of state actually prefer the softer equation of state. So, for example, with this prior, now we are getting the value of lambda 0.4 with the GW17 observation around 280 plus minus some error. So, which is exactly similar to what LIGO is getting using spectral equation of state or piecewise spectrum. So, so that's why our demand is that we can only explain the softness which is we are getting from the astrophysical observation by using a nuclear physics agnostic prior. Otherwise, nuclear physics is in tension with astrophysical observations.
Bhaskar, so I have a little bit, I don't know. So when you talk about nuclear physics tension every time, so always nuclear physicists think about it, binding energy of finite nuclei, neutron skin thickness. So if you consider neutron skin thickness in your calculation, is there any effect on in your calculation?
Yeah, so in our agnostic prior, this one here, we didn't we didn't fix the binding energy actually. So we know from the nuclear physics experiment the value of binding energy is around minus 16 MeV, right? But we instead of fixing that binding energy, we chose
No,
a
you
very
are talking about minus 16 MeV is the nuclear matter binding energy. It's not a
yes
finite nuclear matter.
nuclear matter binding energy. And also saturation density we know 0.161 Fermi cube, right? So
Yes.
here in the agnostic prior, we didn't fix those quantity, and we assume a very large prior for this thing. And we found in order to explain the astrophysical data, the saturation density, value of saturation density will have to be around 0.24. So which is completely illogical from the nuclear physics perspective. So that's why we are claiming that nuclear physics is in tension with astrophysical observations.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Go ahead.
So I have a comment here.
yeah.
So, for example, actually it is your saturation density coming around 1.0.16, now 0.2, or you are constant at that point 0.2.
No, it is coming. So actually, we are getting a posterior of saturation density, which
Because
peaks
if
are.
you are, if you, okay, for example, like if you fit your things at the, you constant your parameter corresponding to 0.2 density, it is perfect because nowadays you go ahead to the more than saturation density around 2 times of the saturation density and constant your things and get better prediction for the higher density region like a high density, high temperature as well as for the neutron stars like high isospin asymmetry, all these things. But if you are telling that your saturation density around 2, then it is a little unphysical to speak like 0.2 is your saturation density because we have a precise range for the saturation density. So
That's
the
our point is
saturation
actually.
is also quite sensitive for all the things what we observe in the nuclear matter.
Sure.
So so
So
can
that is
you
exactly our point. That is exactly so. In order to explain the softness in our observation, our saturation density actually coming around 0.24 Fermi cube, 0.24 1 by Fermi cube. So that is actually not informed by the nuclear physics experiment. That is exactly what you have said. So that's why we call this prior as agnostic prior. So this is not physical nuclear physics motivated prior actually. So in that sense, we can tell that there is a tension between nuclear physics input and the astrophysical observations. So that's
okay?
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
I got your points, but
Yeah.
I think I suggest you one paper, maybe two papers,
Yeah.
one by Latimer in 2006, 2005 or 6 in physics, some review in physics, physical physics report or something, and one another paper by the Brazilian group Tatra in 2014 in PRC. So you go there, maybe you can get more to constraint and all these things fitting and also big you, Agrobal sir has also have a very good paper on many kind of parameter using SCORM. So you can, I think you have to follow because what you speaking, it is a little complex to get into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we are not demanding that this is right. We are demanding this is completely agnostic. That's our point is.
Okay, okay, okay.
I got your point. So
Okay, you can.
when we use this nuclear physics motivated prior, we actually followed those constraints. The paper you mentioned, we take into account actually, and from that those range actually we construct our prior range. But here in this result, we are completely agnostic about nuclear physics because right now the people who most of the people they are using this kind of piecewise polytrope or spectral equation of state. They are actually they do not care about nuclear physics, right? They do not follow the saturation property itself. So this is actually analogous to those equation of state. So that is what we are trying to show by this result.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we do this model comparison between this agnostic prior and informed prior. So agnostic means nuclear physics agnostic prior, and informed means nuclear physics informed prior. And with those prior, here we are getting different posterior of lambda 1.4, which are shown in this plot. So you can see we are getting quite different result. So now, given these two model, one can do this model comparison by calculating the Bayes factor. So we calculate this Bayes factor and we find it around 5.3 with some error bar, and this Bayes factor actually in favor of the agnostic prior. So data actually prefers the nuclear physics agnostic prior, not the nuclear physics informed prior. However, this value of 5.3 is not very large, so we cannot make strong comment about how large is the tension or how large is the tension. That's why the title of our paper is Hint of a Tension between nuclear physics and astrophysical observations. So now one thing is that why are we getting this tension? That is because right now data is not strong enough. So if the data would have strong enough, then it would not have been prior, the result would not have been prior dependent. So that's why there is this tension. So hopefully after few observations, when you stack all the results together, all the data together, the data will be strong enough, so these prior dependencies will be removed. So for example, when we used this projected constant, after 10 observations, this data will be prior independence. So whatever you use, if you use agnostic prior or if you use nuclear physics motivated prior, we'll get the same results. So hopefully after some day, this will not happen. So this is what the first part of my talk ends, and I'll move on to the second part. So this talk will be based on this particular event, GW event, which is named as GW 190814. And this is probably the most enigmatic observation which LIGO has made so far. So is there any question? I saw a chat. To be precise, speed off. Sorry, I get the significance of this factor, but maybe I missed something. What is exactly? So Bayes factor actually. So when we do normal MCMC calculation, we do not calculate the Bayes factor. So let's go back to the Bayes theorem. So remember here, this C is a normalization constant. I told you to forget about C. So, but C comes around at the denominator of this equation, and it is called the evidence actually. So this so Bayes factor is actually the ratio. So suppose you have two different hypotheses. So in our case, one hypothesis is the agnostic prior, and another is hypothesis the nuclear physics informed prior, and we are trying to find out which hypothesis actually representing the data better. So that Bayes factor can be calculated by that ratio of evidence. So that evidence will come at the denominator. So that we are calculating here, and we are getting is 5.3. And since this Bayes factor is in favor of this agnostic prior, so the agnostic model is actually more preferred by the data. So that's the significance here. Now let's go to the next next paper or next part of my talk. So now this particular event GW 190814 is associated with a 23 solar mass black hole and a compact object which has mass around 2.6 solar mass. Now this compact object actually lies in a parameter space which was previously unexplored by the astrophysical observations. So this lies in the mass gap region. So we do not know whether this compact object is a black hole or neutron star. We haven't observed any electromagnetic counterpart associated with this event, and also we didn't get any tidal signature from this particular observation. Therefore, only thing which we have is the mass distribution of this object. So here I show you the mass distribution of the secondary object by this blue posterior, and in the orange we show the maximum mass distribution of the non-rotating neutron star. So this maximum mass distribution actually obtained from our previous study. So in our previous study we constrained the equation of state posterior using combined GW NICER data, and those equation of state posterior can be used to find out this maximum mass distribution. And from this maximum mass distribution we can calculate the overlap between these two distributions, and we can find out what is the probability of this object being a neutron star. So that probability comes around 9%, and so therefore the probability the object could be a black hole is around 91%. However, we didn't include one other possibility, that is that neutron star can also be rotating, and rapid rotation can increase the mass of the neutron star up to 20%. So therefore, if we assume the neutron star is rapidly rotating, then it can easily explain this observed mass. So in this paper, what we do, we consider different hypotheses. So one is the non-rotating hypothesis, and there is a rapidly rotating hypothesis, and considering both of these hypotheses, we explore what is the properties of this secondary object using Bayesian methodology. So let's talk about the slowly rotating or non-rotating hypothesis. So here we took our previous observation, we also combined our previous observation. For example, we combined two GW data and the NICER data. And remember, in our previous work, we used a 2 solar mass hard cutoff for the maximum mass. So instead of that, if it is a non-rotating neutron star, that's why we use the full posterior of the secondary mass of the GW 190814 as the maximum mass threshold. So using that, we are getting this result. So here in the left, the distribution of R1.4 and the distribution of lambda 1.4 is shown, and their median and 1 sigma credible interval are also printed in this plot. And this actually done by several other papers also, and our value actually agrees with their value. Now here if you see the pressure density diagram, that if this secondary object is a non-rotating neutron star, it will constrain the high density part of the equation of state very much, because now very few equation of state actually can produce this amount of maximum mass. So that's why the high density part is getting severely constrained here. So now let's move on to the rapidly rotating hypothesis. So here we combine our previous observation, the two GW and NICER data, as a non-rotating neutron star, and unlike our previous study, here we use a different maximum mass threshold for the non-rotating neutron star, which is coming from the Cromarty pulsar, which is newly observed actually. And another thing is that in neutron star we see there are different kind of universal relation exist. So first this thing was found by Kenty again Nico Yunes in 2013, a universal relation called I love Q, which tells us the moment of inertia, tidal love number, and quadrupole moment, they are related with each other irrespective of what is the equation of state of neutron star is. So there are several other relations also. So for example, here there is another relation which is found by Breuil and Rizzola in 2016, that universal relation tells us there is a relation between the maximum mass of a rapidly rotating neutron star and the maximum mass of a non-rotating neutron star, and this is shown by this relation. So here chi is the dimensionless spin magnitude of the rapidly rotating neutron star, and chi Kepler is the maximum possible spin magnitude of the rapidly rotating neutron star. Now, this type of universal relations are actually very helpful for the computation purpose, because in our Bayesian code we need some relation which can make the calculation very faster. So that's why we use this type of universal relation, and using that we simultaneously sample the equation of set parameters and this quantity chi by chi Kepler. Now, after getting those equation of set sample and chi by chi Kepler, we can use those things in our rotating neutron star code, which is also publicly available and written by Nicholas Starogioulas.
So you have calculated. So Bhaskar, so
Yeah.
you have calculated this spin using RNS code, or
So
that is
first,
chi
okay,
and chi divided by chi Kepler?
we use both actually. So when we are sampling the equation of set parameters and this chi by chi Kepler, we are using the universal relation actually. Okay, so using the universal relation, we are sampling equation of set parameters and this quantity chi by chi Kepler. Now this after running the Bayesian analysis, we have this equation of set posterior and the chi Kepler samples. Now we use those quantities in the RNS code actually.
So this
that
chi divided by chi Kepler sampling from observation, right?
yes, that is from the observation. Now
Pulsar observation.
that is from the not pulsar observation, that is combining these three data and also the GW 190814.
So I can understand from NICER you can extract the data like spin, but how do you extract this like spin data from GW observation?
So that is we are doing by this this relation, right? So let's say we are randomly sampling some equation of state parameters. We call one equation of state, and by calling that equation of state, we can calculate that m max DOB, right? Okay. Now we also randomly calling this quantity chi by chi Kepler. So now we have m max DOB and chi by chi Kepler. So from that we are calculating m rot m max. Now given the distribution of the secondary,
can you tell about the range chi by chi Kepler?
This is within 0 to 1. Because chi can have maximum value of chi Kepler, right? So this is within 0 to 1.
Because GW170 at the maximum infinity prior is less than 0.87, right?
Sorry.
If I can interfere, can we keep the specific questions till the end, because I think we are getting dragged. We have to finish it and then you can ask the specific questions, please.
Okay.
Okay. So now we use both of these things, this universal relation and RNS code, to deduce the properties of the secondary object. So one thing here I should tell you that this universal relation is not exact. It has some error. So Breuer reported there is 2% error in their relation. So we actually assume that error is actually uniformly distributed throughout the parameter space. So that's why we distribute that error between -2% to +2% within the parameter space, and we marginalize over that error. So that way actually we get unbiased posterior of the several properties of the secondary of GW 190814. Now let's move on to the result. So if the neutron star is rapidly rotating, then it will no longer keep the spherically symmetric shape. So it will become either oblate or prolate, this kind of. So here in the upper left, the equatorial radius distribution is plotted and the ellipticity is plotted in the upper middle. So from this value of from the value of these two quantity, we can guess that there will be a significant amount of deviation from the spherical symmetric configuration if this object is a rapidly rotating object. And also in the lower bottom panel, in the lower left panel, the posterior distribution of the rotational frequency is plotted, and the median value is come around 1100 Hz. So till now we have observed the maximum spin of a pulsar is around 716. So if the secondary of GW19014 is a rapidly rotating neutron star, it could be the fastest rotating neutron star ever. Now, in a rapidly rotating neutron star, any kind of rapidly rotating neutron star is actually generically unstable through a mechanism called Chandrasekhar-Friedman-Schutz instability. So this instability tells us whenever certain mode which is retrograde in a rotating frame becomes prograde in inertial frame, then a system loses energy in terms of gravitational wave. So this is true for the rotational mode or R mode for at any value of frequency. Therefore, any rotating star cannot exist at all in nature. However, there are certain phenomena inside the neutron star, for example viscosity, they can damp that instability. So if the viscous time scale actually dominates over the instability time scale, then this type of instability can be damped. So if the temperature of the neutron star is greater than 10 to the power 11 Kelvin, the bulk viscosity actually damp the R mode instability, and if the temperature is less than 10 to the power 5 Kelvin, then the shear viscosity dominates the shear viscosity can damp the R mode instability at any value of frequency. But however, in this middle range, the R mode instability will dominate over the viscosity time scale, and there will be instability. So suppose a neutron star which is newly born, it has a very high spin which is around here. So as it enters this R mode instability window, it will lose energy, and as it losing energy, its spin will be down. So it will follow this path, and after some point it will end up here. So because of that, we do not expect to see such a highly rotating neutron star. So here in our case, the spin magnitude we are getting is around 0.9 or somewhere here. So in order to become this is a rapidly rotating neutron star, either its temperature has to be greater than 10 to the power 11 Kelvin or less than 10 to the power 5 Kelvin. However, we do not expect neutron star to be that much high temperature in a binary neutron star system. This scenario is not possible, and also if it has to be less than 10 to the power 5 Kelvin, before that actually before reaching 10 to the power 5 Kelvin, the neutron star would have merged with the black hole. So from this picture, the rapidly rotating neutron star hypothesis actually very less likely. However, there are other kind of damping mechanism. For example, it is believed that inside a neutron star there is superfluidity, and superfluidity, if there is a superfluidity below 10 to the power 9 Kelvin, actually it damps the R mode instability severely. So for example, you can see from this graph the instability window actually shrunk by this amount, right? Now let's imagine a scenario that our secondary object was initially in a low mass X-ray binary system, and it was accreting matter from the companion mass, and that's why it spun up to that amount, and it lies here. And later it come into a binary system with a 23 solar mass black hole. So if there is a superfluidity, then it can actually it can retain its frequency. So in order to become a rapidly rotating neutron star, we need a great role of superfluidity inside a neutron star. So if this is a rapidly rotating neutron star, it will tell us a lot about superfluidity inside a neutron star. So here in this paper, we examined both the non-rotating hypothesis and the rapidly rotating hypothesis, and we see that both hypotheses can explain the observation. However, the probability is very less, and as well as the condition we need is also very extreme. Therefore, it suggests that the secondary object is more likely a black hole. Now, if the secondary is a black hole, then it will also tell us about the Newton star equation of state, because now this object will place an upper limit of the Newton star maximum mass. And if we assume that upper limit and we run our Bayesian analysis again, and we found this maximum distribution of the Newton star. So here we see that the value of maximum mass is now around 2.12 plus minus 0.15 within the 90% confidence interval. So this is the most stringent constraint we are getting in our in our study on the maximum mass of the Newton star. So, in a conclusion, that this object is a very interesting object, and different hypotheses, leads to different results, which are very interesting. So this is the good point. I would like to end my talk, and thank you again for listening and for your patience. So if there are any questions, you can please ask me now.
Thank you, Bhaskar, for a very nice presentation. So the session is now open for questions, comments, discussions. Sorry, Bharat, I interrupted you before. You can bring that question up again if you want.
Sorry, I missed a question. Some question by what is the limit of differentiability? So what do you mean by differentiability, Gagandeep?
I think, I don't know, probably he meant deformability. I'm not sure, because I also didn't understand it. This is why I did not interrupt you. Gagandeep, what do you mean by differentiability?
Yeah, because this terminology may be not used in the slides anywhere. Gagandeep is there?
Of course, he is virtually there, but maybe not physically.
Rejoin.
Okay, we can take
an. If the participant there, then I can. In the meantime, I can have a discussion.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
He's typing. Yeah.
The limit of slow and fast rotation. So usually the notion is that the dimensional spin magnitude, it should be for the slow rotation it should be less than 0.05, and for fast rotation we take 0.89.
This is like a GW first observation limit you have taken.
And
low spin prior and a high spin prior.
Yeah. So if you take any hadronic equation of state, you cannot reach more than a value of chi equal to 0.7. And in order to reach chi equal to 0.89, you have to consider quark or any other kind of exotic material.
Yes. So can you go to the slide where you have shown the ellipticity, moment of inertia?
Yeah.
So here you talked about the ellipticity for the pulsar, or it's a combined GW, NICER, or X-ray observation.
So here all the properties are shown for the secondary object of GW 190814. If we consider if that object is a rapidly rotating neutron star. So this is a property of that 2.6 solar mass object.
Okay, here I just want to know a little bit about, like, for example, if you implement the rotation in our core, so how much enhancement in the mass you get, approximately, like, for example, for a neutron star?
So rotation, if we introduce, it can increase the mass of a neutron star up to 20% or maybe 25%.
Okay, and the Kepler frequency, what is the limit of the Kepler frequency you have taken,
So,
basically for your...
theoretically, it can go to chi Kepler, right? But
Okay.
if you take any hadronic equation of state, you will not get the value of chi which is greater than 0.7, and in order to reach more value of chi, you need to introduce some kind of exotic material like quark or hyperon. So then you can reach up to 0.89. That's why the high spin prior limit is 0.89.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so according to your analysis, the secondary object may be a fastest rotating neutron star, right? And it contains the only hadronic compositions.
Yes, it could be faster rotating neutron star, but since I have discussed this kind of instability, that armored instability, right? So because any neutron star is generically unstable because of this type of instability. So
Right.
if we take into account those kind of instability, then it becomes very less likely to be a rapidly rotating neutron star, because those kind of star we expect to become armored unstable. However, I also discussed about the effect of superfluid. So this superfluidity actually can damp that kind of instability. So if this is a rapidly rotating neutron star, then superfluidity will have a great role. That future will tell with more observations actually.
There is a question in the chat box. What is the spin of the RNS using your mode?
What is the spin of the RNAs? So the first thing is that we are sampling the spin parameter, that the chi by chi Kepler that is there from our Bayesian analysis. So that means we have equation of state samples, and corresponding to that equation of samples we have chi by chi Kepler samples. So now these samples, we have many samples, and we inject those samples in the RNS code, and using those samples we calculate the properties of the neutron star. And since we have many samples, so for all the samples we calculate those properties and we draw those distribution which I shown in those plots.
Okay, I have a few questions. Maybe we can go to the very beginning, slide 3 or 4, I think.
Sure, I'm just...
No, because you where you showed soft or steam equation of state.
Here, right? It's like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because few years ago, those equation of state which could reach to solar mass, we used to call them stiff. I mean, how within a few years the scenario changed. But all this designing of steep equation of state is based on this observation, right? Whether there is a 2.6 solar mass neutron star or not. But there was no physical evidence from the experiment itself that this should be a neutron star or a black hole. But of course, whether it's a black hole or neutron star, it's a challenging task for the theoreticians. But what is the prospect in future to find this kind of observation where we can make sure that there can be a neutron star more than, I don't know, 2.5, 2.6 solar mass?
So
You
there is
have
only
any?
there is
Yes.
only two possibilities. The
Yeah.
one comes from the radio observations, so where we are seeing the pulsation from the radio observation, and there we can for surely say that is a neutron star. So that's how we obtain the two solar mass constraint. And the second possibility is that in future we observe GW, we this kind of neutron star and this kind of compact object which has mass around 2.6 or 2.7 whatever, and from that observation we also observed the electromagnetic counterpart. If there is electromagnetic counterpart, for sure we can say that is a neutron star. So these are the two possibilities right now comes in my mind.
Okay, I have another question in your slide 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, this KSIM is the. Can you go to the definition of KSIM, because
Sure, sure.
you call them the way I. Yeah. So yeah,
Hmm.
this is the KSIM, what we call KSIM.
Hmm.
Uh, in my opinion, of course, I mean, I don't know whether you have been watching on this recent development on this KSIM calculations, because I saw a very recent paper just last week, and they are trying to conclude that this KSIM should not be less than minus 200, which is also the number I believe in. So this prior you chose minus 800 plus minus 100. In my opinion, it's a bit far away from the present. I don't know,
No,
constant from the.
it's not plus minus 100. It's from 800 to 100 uniform.
Ah, okay. This is the bound.
This is the bound. Yes, this is
Ah,
not
I
plus.
thought this was a sigma.
No, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, no. This is uniform prior. Yeah. Thanks.
Ah,
No.
okay, okay, okay.
So this
Then
is
it's right.
basically the most variability that this casing can have that we have assumed.
So this is now, because when this paper I saw last week, they say it cannot
Who,
go
who are the
below minus 200.
Chiranjeev, who are the authors?
Uh, Hannah Gill, Young Min Kim,
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Panagiota
it's
Papa
a South
Constantino
Korean paper.
is the Korean group.
Ah, okay.
I can give you the reference.
Okay.
I'll send you the reference later on.
Okay. 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 Yeah.
Because also because I'm telling this paper, but we also have worked on KSIM a little bit, where we try to constant KSIM itself from the lower order 17 energy parameters, and there also we found the number very close to minus 200. It cannot go very below minus 300 for sure. So this is why minus 800 caught my eye. This is what I wanted to point out. So maybe when you obtained your posterior, what was the mean of this casing, if I can
So
see
the
that?
mean comes around minus 270
Okay.
and with some error bar of, let's say, 100 sigma.
Yeah.
One
Okay.
sigma is around 100 or something.
Yeah. No, no, that is a very reasonable number. That is a very reasonable number. Of course, with my acceptance. Uh,
But the value you are suggesting, that actually refers very steep equation of state. Because if you go negative value towards the negative value of Ksim,
yeah.
then you can may produce softer equation of state of Newton, which currently astrophysical observation actually suggests. So with that bound, we'll get more stiffer equation of state posterior.
Mm, no, but here also, for example, because I am now confused again with your prior. When you show the prior of K0 from
Yeah,
240 to 30, you mean
this is
in
a
the,
Gaussian distribution. So
but
the
it's not the
sigma is
same. Is the not the same for KSIM?
no. So for Ksim, we assume uniform prior, and
Ah,
for
you say it. Sorry, sorry,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah, yeah.
so we
Now,
divided in three class actually.
yeah. Okay. I don't have any other question. No, and maybe one more. When you say that with this mean value around little bit less negative number, then your
Hmm.
equation of state becomes much stiffer. But of course, there is a possibility of phase transition, right?
Yeah, that we didn't include in this work. So in order to explain that softness, we need to introduce other kind of physics. Maybe that phase transition actually will help in this regard.
Because this was the burning problem 10 years ago, that this hyperon introduction of hyperons softens the equation of state considerably. I think Prashantoda also authored some papers regarding the phase transition.
Yeah, that's for sure, and it can give you it can give you softness in the equation of state. So that is the one possibility here. So which we would like to pursue in future.
Yeah, the phase transition gives you another problem of the speed of sound inside the quark matter. So it's not that easy to get very high, steep equation of state just only by phase transition.
Actually, I don't know if you have seen a recent paper, not very recent, maybe 2-3 months old. They call it quark-ionic matter. It's
By
by
Renzi,
what? It's by
okay.
I think a very famous author. I forgot his name.
It's a Sanjay Reddy.
Yeah, Sanjay Reddy.
Mathematical,
Yes.
yes. And after
They
that, Jens Latimer did.
yeah by Latimer, exactly Ramnathan.
Yeah, I followed their papers. I mean, earlier papers also. I mean, they postulate some deviation of speed of sound, like in between it should go beyond the conformal limit, and it will asymptotically go to the conformal limit from top, not from below.
Yes,
So
they. I mean, of course, this was almost done by hand. There was no physics motivation behind it,
exactly.
but they
So if you
respect the.
if you see David Blasquez's paper,
Yes.
they always take c equals to 1, and they get very large and stiff equation of state. Of course, if you take the c equals to 1, you will get stiffest
Yeah,
equation.
but this quark-ionic matter was because they were still respecting the asymptotic limit.
Yeah. But the asymptotic limit is violated in between. Sorry, the conformal limit is violated in between. The asymptotic limit is okay. Asymptotically, it goes to 1/3 c square.
Yeah.
But around like the densities in our interest, they go high up to 0.95 something, and then it drops at much higher density, because they cannot go to higher densities at that high speed of sound, because we already have calculations from lattice QCD. So
Yeah. This particularly quark-ionic matter was almost kind of handwritten model, if
yeah,
if I.
no, I know. There is a paper by Ingotius. There are many papers by Ingotius on that.
Yeah. Yes.
Ingotius, Reddy, and Latimer, and that whole group. So yeah, I know that. We are trying to write another paper. Just uh,
So maybe
handling.
I just stop recording now. We can still keep doing discussions.